Long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the pregame edition of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I got my co-host by my side, Jack McCurry. How you doing tonight, Jack?
Doing good. Watching some Buckeye football and ready to preview this Browns-Ravens matchup.
Yeah, we're a little late on this one, but we wanted to get in here and give you our thoughts before this game tomorrow. A really important game. If Browns win tomorrow, they're in first place in the AFC North, and after that 1-2 start, I think that everybody would take that at this point, and especially in this tough stretch of games that we have going on and coming up. Let's start with the injuries because that was a big story last week, and things have gotten a little bit better, but Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, Morgan Burnett, Rashard Higgins, Chris Hubbard, and Redwine are all questionable. Lamb is out for the game tomorrow. Demarius Randall is back, which is great news for that Browns secondary. Jimmy Smith is out for the Ravens. Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Williams, and Mark Andrews are all questionable. Jack, looking at the injuries on both sides, give me a player who each team is going to miss the most on both sides.
I definitely think with the Browns side, while they're all questionable, I'd be shocked if our secondary is going to play. Obviously Randall's back, but the other three are still hurt. Denzel Ward, I think is going to be the biggest loss because when you look at that Ravens offense, and we'll talk about him in a little bit, but Marquise Brown has been impressive for the first 3 games for the Baltimore offense. Kansas City shut him down for the most part, and obviously if you're missing your number one corner, while our guys played well last week when they had to step up, I don't know if someone could match Brown's speed like Denzel Ward. So obviously if he's out, that's going to be a big hit for the Browns secondary. And then, when you look at the Ravens secondary, as tough as they are, Jimmy Smith being out, that's going to, and the fact that Marlon Humphrey is questionable, that's going to benefit the Browns offense. And we'll talk about them here in a second as well as one of the keys to the game. If their secondary's banged up, this is a chance for Baker Mayfield and company to really attack that Ravens defense, who has been tough on Cleveland forever. And absolutely their secondary is one of the best in football. So if they're banged up, Beckham, Landry, etc., are going to be able to attack that.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a tough matchup guarding that Ravens offense between Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews if he plays. They have skill position players everywhere, and they're very, very good at stretching the field vertically. And I think that's where they're different than the Rams. Rams don't have a guy that's just going to run by you. Hollywood Brown's going to do that. The Rams attack more side to side, sideline to sideline. The Ravens are going to go down the field on you, and that's where Hollywood Brown is going to get you. And we have that as one of our keys to the game. We'll dive into it more right now. This season, he has 20.1 yards per reception. He only had 2 catches for 49 yards last season, or last game against Kansas City. But talk about how big of an addition Hollywood Brown has been as a rookie to Lamar Jackson, who really struggled throwing the ball last season. So talk about how he's been able to improve this Ravens offense and help Lamar Jackson out.
I mean, you go back to his days at Oklahoma and how he was able to take the top off a defense, whether it was Baker at quarterback or Kyler Murray, the sheer athleticism, the speed that Marquise Brown brings. And he showed that right out the gate week 1 against Miami, when he had 4 catches for 147 yards, including, he had an 83-yard touchdown really early in the game. So he shows you just what a dynamic threat he is offensively. And, if you give Lamar Jackson space and time to throw, Lamar Jackson has a strong arm. I think that was one of the big knocks on him. And if you give Marquise Brown in a situation where he's going down the field, not too many corners can keep up with him. That's why I said Denzel Ward being out is going to hurt, because, if in a one-on-one situation, Brown's going to blow past Terrence Mitchell, TJ Carey with the right move. And if we can limit him, I think obviously the Browns defense will be in a better situation to win. But, all it takes is one little move and he'll be gone, and it's going to be so tough to beat him and that Ravens offense in that case.
Yeah, and, the part you really have to worry about with the Ravens is their running attack. They added Mike Ingram. Obviously, you have Lamar Jackson, who's going to run the football as well. How do you think they plan to contain, or at least attempt to contain, this Ravens offense that has been so good through the first 3 games of this 2019 season? Lamar Jackson has been tearing it up. Mark Ingram has found new life in Baltimore, coming over from New Orleans. We talked about Hollywood Brown. Do you think that they're going to solely sell out on the running attack for the majority of the game, force Lamar Jackson to beat them with his arm?
Definitely. I think that's the key to stopping the Ravens at any point. If you can key in on the run and stop it early, and you force Lamar Jackson to make some throws, while he's made strides as a passer yet, he's not, I wouldn't say he's an established passer yet in the National Football League. Obviously the run sets all that up for him. And, you mentioned Mark Ingram, he's finally the lead back, and he's getting the majority of the carries in Baltimore, where he had to split time in New Orleans, whether it was with, Reggie Bush or recently with Alvin Kamara. Ingram's finally the bell cow, and they're relying on him, and he doesn't have as much tread as, other lead backs in the league. And then adding the fact you have Gus Edwards, who's a dynamic threat. They drafted Justice Hill out of Oklahoma State. While he's been limited so far this year, when he gets the ball, he can take it the distance as well. So they have so many weapons, and then you add in Lamar, who's averaging 6.4 yards a carry already this year. It's a tough offense with that running attack. And if the Browns can key in on it, and I seen a stat where they had the 6th best run defense in the league in a category so far this season. So it's been good. They shut down Todd Gurley last week. If they can shut down, Ingram and subsequently Lamar Jackson as well, it's going to put the Browns in a great position to win, because then you're going to force Lamar to throw where he hasn't been perfect. He's made strides, definitely, but he's not up there with the other top quarterbacks in the league just yet.
With Lamar Jackson, his completion percentage this year is 63%. Last year, it was only 58%. In college, the highest he had was 59%. So what have the Ravens done schematically to help Lamar Jackson complete a career high, at least through 3 games this season, a career high in completion percentage to allow him to make strides as a passer?
I think it's establishing those quick throws, the quick offense. We've seen it here in Cleveland, with Baker, getting the ball out quickly, and it helps having plenty of targets. We mentioned Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews is a reliable weapon at the tight end position. If he's out, that's going to hurt them big time. Ingram has the ability to come out of the backfield, so does Gus Edwards. And then you look at the other weapons they've had. Willie Snead, who, Ray Farmer didn't think was a good receiver, and he's proved it in New Orleans and now in Baltimore that he's a reliable weapon at the wide receiver position. You also have Hayden Hurst, who they used on the first round pick a couple years ago, and Nick Boyle at the tight end position as well. They've put a number of weapons around Lamar Jackson to succeed, and obviously his accuracy's gotten better. Like I said, he's not the most established passer, but he can certainly throw it, despite some of the narratives during the offseason. So, as long as they get the passes out quickly, I think he's more comfortable in the pocket, but he can also extend plays and is able to make some incredible throws. You look last week when he's throwing it across his body 30 yards down the sideline, and his receivers he can count on to make plays, and it's made him look, a little sketchy at times, but he's been able to pull off some incredible throws, and I think that just shows the hard work that he's put in on the offseason to become a better passer.
I really didn't have doubts that he could throw the ball. With as much film as I watched on the quarterbacks that came into the draft last year, I watched a lot of Louisville, and I was always confident that he was going to get there. I thought last year was just him being a rookie, getting thrown into a situation with Joe Flacco going down, and just trying to learn it as he went. And this offseason, they completely changed their playbook in the Ravens, the offensive playbook. They've been able to incorporate things that he's comfortable with, and I think that's why he's been able to make such great strides, from year one to year two. But for me, that skill's always been there for him. Where he excels the most is, I think, throwing on the run, when he's able to use his legs and throw at the same time, just because he's so dangerous running the football. So the Browns defense is going to have to stay honest and stay in their assignments. They're not going to be able to, once they see him rolling, to the right, to the left, or wherever he decides to take off to, they have to stick with their guy, because if you don't, he's going to beat you with his arm. And I think that's the most dangerous part of his game, being able to roll and complete those passes on the run. And, if you're not paying attention, Hollywood Browns are going to run right by you. So hopefully this Browns defense can stay disciplined, stay honest, stick with their assignments, and really focus on what they need to in terms of what to do when Lamar Jackson is rolling out. How do you propose the Browns shut down the Ravens' running attack? Because obviously, we've just been talking about how the running attack is by far their biggest weapon. What do the Browns need to do, and who needs to step up the most in terms of shutting down this running attack?
Well, I think it starts all up front. The Ravens, their offensive line is good. It struggled at times last week, definitely against the pass rush. But, when it starts up front, obviously with the Browns defensive line, and I think they have to set the edge right from the get-go. And, you're going to watch Ronnie Stanley against Myles Garrett, and then Olivier Vernon against Orlando Brown. And Stanley and Brown have established themselves as solid NFL tackles. And, while obviously on the opposite side, Garrett and Vernon are no slouches at the pass rush, they have to step up and be strong to, beat them to the punch and be able to maintain the outside and shut down the outside part. I think inside, we're going to be able to stop them. Yonda's been in the league a long time. So Ogunjobi and Richardson are going to be able to attack that. And then they have a couple young guys in there at guard and center with Skura and Bozeman. So I think, obviously, up front, it's going to be the battle. But you got to hope that guys like Schobert and Mac Wilson, Taki, those guys can stop stuff on the outside if Myles Garrett and Vernon somehow lose, and Ingram or whoever's running the ball, if they get that first step and get into the secondary, that those linebackers could be able to stop up front.
For me, the biggest key for the Browns in this game defensively is make the tackle on the first try. You can't have missed tackles against this team. with the amount of playmakers that they have, whether it's trying to tackle Hollywood Brown, whether it's Mark Ingram, whether it's Lamar Jackson. You cannot afford to miss tackles against a team like this who has such a good running attack, can beat you vertically. I know missed tackles are important every week, but this week even more so. You cannot afford to miss any tackles against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. On the other side, with the Browns offense, it's been a struggle through the first 3 weeks, trying to get things going. Things were a little bit better this past week against the Rams. They won the game against the Jets, but you didn't feel impressed with the offense after that win. The opening game against Tennessee, that was a disaster in terms of offense. What do the Browns need to do this week? Baker Mayfield, Freddie Kitchens, Todd Monken. What do they need to do to build on what they started to do last Sunday night against the Rams to have success against this Ravens defense that, while they've lost a lot of pieces, still has some really good playmakers on that defense?
They definitely need to continue sustaining that rhythm offensively. And when I mean that, I mean continue incorporating Nick Chubb into the offense. He had 23 carries against the Rams. You need to continue to give him at least 20 to 25 touches, at least in the running game. They've even established him more in the receiving game. He had 4 catches on 7 targets. You need to continue to establish the quick RPO offense that Baker was dominating the Rams with. I think it was 12 of 13 when they were getting the ball out less than 2.5 seconds. You need to keep implementing that. I know Todd Monken's side of the offense calls for, down the field vertical throws, but that's not working. And it's forcing Baker to hold the ball more. The receivers aren't getting open. And then that forces Baker to not trust his tackles, roll out to the right, and, he gets exposed there. You need to make him comfortable in this offense. You need to just keep establishing the quick throws, and you need to keep incorporating Chubb, because when you got a guy like Nick Chubb, even, you use him right now. He's essentially in his prime because, running backs don't last very long. And if you can get him going on the running game, those throws and the quick game are going to open up. And then when you have guys like Beckham and Landry who can turn, 5-yard routes into 20, 25 yard catches, and sometimes even going for the home run ball on a slant like Beckham did against the Jets, that's going to make our offense have sustained success and be what we all expected it to be.
Talk about the playmakers that the Ravens have on defense. They have lost a lot of guys, but they still have a very strong defense, and they lead the league this year in quarterback hits through 3 games. In 3 games, they've hit the opposing quarterback 28 times, and the leader in that aspect, I just had it here, is Matt Judon. He has 9 quarterback hits on his own this season. So talk about him, Earl Thomas, and some of the other guys they have on defense that, like I said, they've lost a lot of guys. They lost Terrell Suggs and whatnot. So talk about these guys that they still do have and how they've been able to make such a big impact so far this season.
Yeah, their defense lost a lot in the offseason. Eric Weddle went to the Rams, Terrell Suggs went to the Cardinals, but they were able to add, Earl Thomas, who, was probably one of the biggest offseason moves. I remember the night we got Odell Beckham, then rumors were swirling that the Browns were going to get Earl Thomas. Then the next day he signs with Baltimore, and that was kind of a punch in the gut. But like you said, he's one of the best, if not the best, safeties in football. He's been dominant so far for Baltimore. He fits exactly what they do defensively. Matt Judon is finally coming on. He essentially stepped up as one of the leaders on defense with, Terrell Suggs leaving. He's been dominant so far this year, putting up good numbers, getting after the quarterback. Then they have, a cast of characters that really haven't been able to put their name in as established NFL defensive players. Patrick Onwusar, Pernell McPhee, who's been around a while, Brandon Carr, who's been around a while, Brandon Williams, who's obviously now questionable. He's a big factor with them at the defensive tackle position. Tony Jefferson, who Browns fans were hopeful we were going to get a couple years ago. He unfortunately went to Baltimore just because he liked their culture better than ours, which I don't fault him at the time a couple years ago. And then obviously their secondary has been dominant. And, while they haven't gotten the picks yet, Jefferson, Humphrey, Thomas, Jimmy Smith obviously is out, but when their secondary is on, it's one of the strongest in football, if not the strongest. So top to bottom, they are solid. The Baltimore defense has always been a thorn in Cleveland's side and the NFL side for that matter. Just they always seem to get after it, no matter who they have.
Before we wrap up here, I really have one more question for you. Do you have confidence in the Browns' offense that they're going to get it together this week and start to come together as a unit and get to that level of success that we all expect and we think that they can get to?
I really do. I just think, with all the talk after, the Rams game and, obviously some other things that have been out there, I just think that the offense is determined to make this work and to silence the critics. I mean, we talked about it all off season and leading up to this regular season. The media did, how dominant this offense was supposed to be. And I truly think that, not only the coaches, Freddie Kitchens, Todd Monken, but the players, and of course Baker Mayfield front and center. I think these guys are determined to make this offense what we thought it was going to be, and B, to silence the people. And I think that's while that's not the end all be all, I think that they're ready to tell everybody we're the Cleveland Browns, we're not the joke anymore, and we're going to show you why this offense was put together. And I really think, even though Baltimore's defense is tough, I think the Browns are so determined to come out on Sunday and say, we're here, we're not going anywhere, and you guys are going to have to come beat us, and we're going to have to come beat you too, obviously. They still have a lot to prove, and I think if they put up a strong fight against the Baltimore Ravens, I think you're going to see a lot of these national pundits take a step back and realize, man, the Cleveland Browns are not messing around.
Yeah, if we can get another game as intense as that season finale was last year, I think that this Sunday is going to be a special game. And, that's what we want with these divisional games. We want hard, well-played football. And that game at the end of last year, while it didn't go our way, that just kind of catapulted some of the momentum the Browns had into the offseason, and able to get some other things done. So obviously it helped the Ravens out too in that aspect. So Jack, as we wrap up here, who wins this game and why?
I think the Cleveland Browns are going to win this game. I think, and I'm glad you brought up the season finale last year, because I think, Baker's been prepping for this game since that game. He had 3 interceptions that game, including one on the final drive, and I think that's eaten him up the last 9 months or so. And I think, especially with all the stuff this week, all the comments that were made about him through the media, I think he is ready to silence a lot of people. And we know, when Baker takes everything that people say about him and he uses it as fuel and motivation to succeed. And I truly think he's going to have a monster game. And I think he's going to really make a lot of people eat crow, essentially, against the Ravens when people said that Lamar Jackson's better than him. I truly think Baker's better. I like Lamar Jackson definitely, but I think the Browns are going to win this game. It's going to be a close one, just because I think both defenses are going to fight for all 60 minutes, as well as both of the offenses. But I truly think the Browns come out on top in this one, 27-24 is my pick, and the Browns know that the AFC North runs through Baltimore. With Cincinnati struggling and obviously Pittsburgh now, Cleveland knows that this is their biggest test towards the division title and ultimately the playoffs. And I think Cleveland comes prepared. I think Cleveland comes to fight, and I think Cleveland comes out on top in this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game for sure. And unfortunately, I think Baltimore is going to squeak this one out. I have the score 33-27. I just think that still with the rash of injuries that the Browns have, they're not going to be able to keep up for 60 minutes with this Ravens offense. In terms of our offense, I think they'll start to piece things together a little bit, but they're still not going to get there all the way. I think this game is going to be close, but I think the Ravens ultimately pull this game out in the end. That game on Monday night, though, with the Steelers and Bengals, I kind of hope that one ends in a tie, so both those teams could still be in last place, just for our sake. But it's nice to see the Steelers sitting at 0-3 with the potential to go 0-4. And I think that there could be a definite opportunity for that one on Monday night. But let's get to our picks for this week. Unfortunately, we both picked Green Bay on Thursday Night Football, and they did not beat the Philadelphia Eagles, so that's one loss for us this week. In terms of overall standings, I lead you by 3 points heading into Week 4. Your lock of the week is the Los Angeles Chargers over the Miami Dolphins, which continues to be a trend for both of us picking whoever the Dolphins play. But this week, I decided to go a little bit different with my lock of the week. I'm taking a little bit of risk on this one, but I think the Minnesota Vikings are definitely going to beat the Chicago Bears, and you actually picked the Bears to win this one. So if for some miracle the Bears do win, you will gain 7 points on me and potentially take the lead for the first time this season.
Yeah, last week I did not pick the Bears against the Redskins, and then their defense decided to absolutely maul Case Keenum, so I'm not going against their defense anymore. While Minnesota has a tough defense themselves, they haven't been able to establish their passing game too much this year early on, which is unfortunate with all the money they've given Kirk Cousins. But it wouldn't shock me if the Vikings win. Obviously, that's a bold pick by you, but I'm not going against that Bears defense anymore until they prove me wrong.
Yeah, that's it is a tough pick I had to make, but I think that Dalvin Cook is still going to have enough success against the Bears for the Vikings to win that game tomorrow or today or whatever time it is right now. All right, Jack, go ahead and plug what you got, and we'll get on out of here.
Just follow me on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE. Won't be tweeting during the game, but I'll definitely post some thoughts after the game. Yeah,
our post-game show will be released sometime probably Monday morning, I would assume, since unfortunately we both have to work tomorrow. But as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Joki, J-O-K-I. You can follow the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085Gridiron. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts. We absolutely appreciate it. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. With all that, we're going to get on out of here. And most importantly, go Browns.